Well, hello, RJC. It is great to be here with so many friends. My friend, the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Senator Ted Cruz, Governor Chris Sununu, Governor Larry Hogan, Senator Hagerty, and all of you patriotic Republicans at the Republican Jewish Coalition's National Leadership Meeting. Thank you all. And I want to thank Norm Coleman and Matt Brooks for their extraordinary leadership, impactful leadership of this great organization, and say to all of you in the RJC from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for all you did to ensure Republican victories across this country, and thank you for electing a new Republican majority in the United States House of Representatives and ending the speakership of Nancy Pelosi once and for all. How long we've been waiting to say that. You know, the RJC has led millions of Jewish Americans home to the Republican Party and made an extraordinary difference in our elections, and it's a joy for me to be here. But it's a particular joy to be here today with my so much better half, someone who has served this nation as a Marine Corps mom, as a 30-year elementary school teacher. She is a pilot, an accomplished artist, and if I may say so, the best second lady the United States of America has ever had. Would you welcome my wife, Karen Pence? So thank you all. And thank all the RJC supporters for being here. And most of all, let me say on behalf of my wife and my family, thank you for the privilege of serving as your vice president. It was the greatest honor of my life. You know, with the support of the RJC from early on in that 2016 campaign, we elected an administration that changed history. We rebuilt our military. We secured our border. Our military crushed the ISIS caliphate and took down their leader without one American casualty. We revived our economy by cutting taxes, rolling back regulation, and we unleashed American energy and made America energy independent for the first time in 70 years. And with the support of the RJC all across this country, Senator, we rolled our sleeves up and confirmed some 300 conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And Senator Ted Cruz, let me thank you in person for Justice Neil Gorsuch, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Thank you, Senator. You know, and as someone who has long championed a country that I have always called our most cherished ally, let me say what an extraordinary privilege it was to be vice president in the most pro-Israel administration in American history. You know, as Matt Brooks knows, I'm actually not new to the cause of the U.S.-Israel relationship. I was elected to Congress in the year 2000. I don't know if I mentioned that I just wrote a book. And I talk about those early days in Congress. I arrived with strong conservative convictions, but I also brought with me a deep and abiding love for the Jewish state of Israel. It was in those early days in Congress, I just made a point. Every time the U.S.-Israel relationship was being debated on the House floor, I would sprint literally toward the House of Representatives and take a spot in the debate. And I must tell you, it struck some of my Democrat colleagues as a little unexpected. Hear this heartland congressman from a rural Indiana district in giving voice to America's relationship with Israel. In fact, I remember on more than one occasion, some prominent Jewish Democrat members of Congress would come up to me, and Ted, the conversation would always be about the same. They would walk up and say, Congressman Pence, that was a pretty good speech about Israel. And I'd say, oh, well, thank you very much. I'm grateful for that. And they'd say, big Jewish community out there in the cornfields of Indiana. And I'd say, well, actually, we have Jewish constituents that I cherish, but no, not a large community. And they'd say, what was your mother's maiden name? And I'd always look them right in the eye and say, look, songs of Israel were the anthems of my youth. And I'm very typical. And the love for Israel echoes out of every little buckboard church beside every cornfield in America. Let me tell you, from the heartland to the coastlands, America stands with Israel. It's true. And with that support and your support, I couldn't be more proud of the record of the Trump-Pence administration. Our administration ensured that Israel would always have the resources and the strength to defend herself by herself. And under our administration, American support for Israel's security was greater than any time in the history of the modern state of Israel. From our first day in office, we took steps to take action to strengthen that relationship. We acknowledged Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. We removed the United States from the UN Human Rights Council for its blatant anti-Israel bias. We shut down the PLO office in Washington, D.C. And our administration signed the strongest executive order ever written to fight anti-Semitism. We banned taxpayer dollars from any institution of higher education that traffics in anti-Semitic hate. And on the foreign stage, we were just as strong. We withdrew from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal and made it clear that America will never allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. We vigorously enforced sanctions against Iran's oil regime, and we isolated Iran more than ever before. We confronted their malign behavior across the region. And for the courage of our armed forces and the decisiveness of our president, Qasem Soleimani is gone. And of course, as Secretary Pompeo just reminded us, after 4 consecutive administrations in both political parties made the promise and broke it, it was the Trump-Pence administration that kept our word to the American people and our most cherished ally when we moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the state of Israel. It was deeply humbling for me to be a small part of that. But to be clear, all the credit goes to the man who made the decision to turn a deaf ear to virtually every leader in the world and every diplomatic expert in the United States and kept his word. I had the great privilege of traveling shortly after the announcement to speak at the Knesset in Jerusalem, where I had the privilege of explaining and announcing our decision. It was one of the greatest honors of my life. But after I returned to the hotel, the phone rang. The president was on the line, He said he'd seen my speech on television, and then he asked me about the embassy. And I said, well, Mr. President, what we're hearing from the State Department is it'll take about 10 years to build, and it's going to be a couple of $2 billion to get it done. And knowing more than a little bit about construction, the president said to me, that's not good enough. And I said, well, that's just what they're telling us. He said, no. He says, call David Friedman, tell David to get it done. Tell David to get the embassy built and opened in Jerusalem. So true story. So Karen and I got in the motorcade. We drove out to the airport, and there was Ambassador David Friedman, a truly great American, standing on the tarmac, shaking my hand, and I walked up to him, and he said, Mr. Vice President, appreciated your speech. It was good to have you here. I said, thank you, David. I said, look, he told me to tell you to get it done. And he said, well, no, we're working with the State Department. We'll work with Congress. We'll get the budget. And I said, David, that's not what he said. He said, get it done. And David got that look in his eye that a New York real estate lawyer can get. And 5 months later, for pennies on the dollar, we opened the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. David got it done. So a president made a decision to keep a promise. And a great champion of Israel, who was our ambassador to our most cherished ally, got it done. It was 2 years later on a trip to Israel, Karen and I made in the early days of 2020, before the COVID pandemic was known and understood and even struck the United States. We were there to participate in an international gathering, but I had the privilege of visiting that American embassy. And as we walked in the front door, I looked over at the cornerstone of the building. Beautiful Jerusalem stone. The tradition of a cornerstone is that the date of the dedication appears, the name of the President of the United States and the ambassador at the embassy at the time. But you can imagine how moved I was when I looked at that cornerstone and I saw that between the name of President Donald Trump and Ambassador David Friedman was my own. David Friedman put it there. To have my name on the Jerusalem stone at the quarter of the American Embassy in Jerusalem is also one of the greatest honors of my life. It's extraordinary to think of the changes that we made. And as I said, to say that every leader in the world told the president not to move the embassy would be an understatement, rather. I mean, literally. I was there for many of the leader calls. I was there for many of the leaders and experts in foreign policy. They all said that it would cause mayhem in the region, that war would break out, that there would be bloodshed. But then the day came, a sunny day in the fall of 2020, when on the south lawn of the White House, leaders of Israel, Bahrain, and the UAE gathered and signed the first peace agreement in the Middle East in nearly 30 years. And that was the leadership that RJC made possible. And your support and your prayers sustained us every step of the way. I recite those accomplishments not to draw them unto myself, but to make sure you all know that we did that together. But how times have changed at home and abroad. As we stand here today, inflation is at a 40-year high. Gasoline prices are through the roof. Our southern border is under siege. Crime is skyrocketing in our cities, and our economy has slipped into a recession. Trillions in debt are piled on our children and our grandchildren. It almost seems that we have an administration that's intent on weakening America at home and abroad. But it's particularly incomprehensible that President Biden has re-entered negotiations for a new and even worse nuclear deal with Iran. So let me make you a promise, of which I'm absolutely certain. If the Biden administration signs a new nuclear deal with the mullahs in Tehran, I promise you, the next American president will be a Republican, and the next American president will tear up that deal on day one. Weakness arouses evil. The disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, the return to appeasement with Iran, is sending a message of weakness around the world that has emboldened the enemies of freedom from Eastern Europe to the Asia Pacific. And as we gather here today, American freedom itself is under attack like never before. Not from foreign enemies, but from a radical left operating within this country. Working through big media, big government, even big business. They've locked arms to advance a pernicious woke agenda designed to tell the American people what to think, what values are acceptable. You know, the ruling elites in Washington have never been more out of touch or more intent on imposing their agenda on each and every one of us. But there is a cure, and that cure is Republican leadership and American freedom. And my fellow Republicans, as a new Republican majority gathers on Capitol Hill, the role of oversight will be important. The Senator and I both know it's a critical role of the Congress to hold the administration and its failings accountable. It'll be important to make the argument against the administration's policies in the public debate. But I truly do believe to win the future, we as Republicans and our elected leaders must do more than criticize and complain. We must unite our party around a bold, optimistic agenda that offers a clear choice and lays a lasting foundation for victory in 2024 and beyond. We have to have a freedom agenda. A freedom agenda that's grounded in our highest ideals. We have to provide for the common defense, stand strong against Russian aggression. We have to arm Taiwan, continue to hold China accountable, and we have to end the flat lining of our national defense spending and give our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guard the resources they need to defend this nation. To revive our economy, we need to make the Trump-Pence tax cuts permanent, and we need to unleash American energy and allow the American people access to all the God-given resources of our land. We need to support law enforcement. We need to secure our border and end the crisis by continuing to build the wall and restore the Remain in Mexico policy that reduced illegal immigration by 90%. And we need to follow the example of Arizona and advance universal school choice for every American family in every state in the Union. We need to be prepared to stand for liberties enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. And with our administration, having appointed to the Supreme Court the 3 justices that gave us a new beginning for life, we must not rest, we must not relent until we restore the sanctity of life to the center of American law in every state in the land. And finally, we must recognize that we live in a time when members of the Democratic Party routinely demean the American founding. When Democrats have sought for years to rewrite the liberties enshrined in our Constitution. There was even talk of trying to pack the court or change the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to achieve outcomes that they couldn't achieve at the ballot box. My fellow Republicans, I think we need to recognize that our party may well be the last line of defense for the Constitution of the United States. You know, every office holder and every member of our armed forces takes the same oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. They take the obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And they pledge to well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office they're about to enter. And it ends with a prayer. So help me God. The American people must know that our party will be the party that keeps our oath to the Constitution, even when political expediency may suggest that we do otherwise. We must, as Proverbs 15 says, we must be the leaders who keep our oath even when it hurts. For the Republican Party to lead America into a boundless future, we must be the party of the Constitution of the United States of America. So to all the members of the Republican Jewish Coalition, my fellow Americans, in these challenging times, let's have faith. Let's have faith in the ideals of our founders and the boundless capacity of every American in freedom to live the American dream. And let's also draw our inspiration from the story of Israel itself. I mean, think about it. How probable is it that a man named Abraham, a man who ruled no empire, commanded no army, performed no miracles, and delivered no prophecy, how probable is it that he should become one of the most influential people in the history of the human race? The progenitor of your faith and mine. How probable is it that his descendants, a group that comprises just 1/5 of 1% of mankind, would outlive and outshine the world's greatest empires? Assyria has fallen, Rome is no more, the walls of Babylon have been reclaimed by the sands of time, yet the Jewish people remain strong and proud and free. And how likely is it that after 2,000 years of exile, after millennia of being scattered to the four corners of the earth, after centuries of relentless persecution and hardship, and just 4 years after walking through the valley of the shadow of death, that same Jewish people should return to their ancestral homeland, created in a day to become a new, free, powerful, proud, and prosperous Jewish state of Israel. There is only one explanation for the miracle of Israel. It is a testimony of generations of your people that should inspire Americans in this generation as much as it's inspired Americans in every generation. That Israel stands for the principle that the promises of God are true. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill said, as I close, in a speech before the Congress relationship between his nation and ours, words that I believe apply to the relationship between America and Israel just as much. Winston Churchill said, "He must indeed have a blind soul who cannot see that some great purpose and design is being worked out here below, of which we have the honor to be faithful servants." And then he admonished of our relationship, as I speak today, of America's alliance with Israel, that in the days to come, the people of the Jewish state of Israel and the United States of America will, in his words, for their own safety, for their good of all, walk together in majesty, in justice, in peace. And I know we will. You know, I don't know what the future holds for my family or yours, but we know who holds the future. And if we will but renew our faith in him and in his eternal promises, I believe the best days for America and our most cherished ally Israel are yet to come. And we will walk together in a boundless future of freedom and inspire all mankind. So help us God. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless Israel. And God bless America.